Welcome to the Galactic Archives, home of any and all information you might need. Today, our story is about the only alien officer of the Empire, Mitth'raw'nuruodo. Grand Admiral Thrawn, one of the greatest tacticians in the Star Wars universe, and its greatest ally, is known by most to be the smarty-pants blue man from the show Star Wars Rebels. However, Thrawn was actually first seen in the Legends universe, then called the Expanded Universe, in a series of books by Timothy Zahn called the Thrawn Trilogy. Mitth'raw'nuruodo, more commonly known as Thrawn, was a Chiss commander that rose through the ranks of the Galactic Empire till he was Grand Admiral of the 7th Fleet. During the rise of the Empire, he was exiled from his people, the Chiss, giving him a reason to join the Imperial forces. Starting at the beginning of his life, or as early as we have in terms of the universe, the book The Outbound Flight, Thrawn appears as a friend of Palpatine back during when Anakin Skywalker is a Padawan. If you've read the Thrawn trilogy, Joruus C'baoth actually is on the Outbound Flight as the head of the committee. So he is killed when Thrawn destroys the Outbound Flight here. And then this is after he ends up destroying a Lucrehulk cruiser, battle cruiser from the Trade Federation containing hundreds of Vulture droids, using a total of 3 fighters and a radio signal. So he then is approached by Palpatine to destroy the Outbound Flight because it's leaving the galaxy, and because of Thrawn being Thrawn, he destroys it because they were traveling outside of the galaxy and it might attract the attention of the Yuzhan Vong, an intergalactic race that would end up invading the galaxy later on anyways. Though, if Thrawn had not destroyed the Outbound Flight, the theory is that the Yuzhan Vong would actually have attacked earlier. Over the next couple years, he would vanish, and you wouldn't be able to find much of him till about 18 BBY, I believe. He is picked up by a group of stormtroopers on the edge of the unknown regions, and he told them he had been exiled from his people, and he was brought to the Emperor, who would allow him to join the Imperial Naval Academy on Coruscant. And before he left the Naval Academy, he had been promoted to Major. Like, he was an ensign in the Naval Academy, and then was pretty much immediately promoted to Major, and went throughout the rest of his time in the Naval Academy as a major, and then graduated as a major, I believe, because he didn't get any more promotions until he was actually out doing things and commanding people. And then over the next 17 years after graduating, he would work on getting himself promoted, working for the Empire, and it would take him 17 years before he became a Grand Admiral. And during his time as an Admiral, not a Grand Admiral quite yet, he gained the trust of the Noghri, which are a race of gray-skinned aliens that were from the planet Honoghr, that essentially believed they owed a life debt to the Empire for trying to restore their planet to what it once was. And the Noghri were impossibly skilled assassins. Like, if you didn't know that they were there, or if they didn't want you to know that they were there, you wouldn't know that they were there. They were very, very good at hiding. And then their preferred weapon was actually a weird stick that would spray out essentially what is a spider web, impossibly strong and extremely sticky. And Thrawn would use them as his assassins, and his personal bodyguard, Rook, was a Noghri. And throughout these years, he would prove himself through many various battles against, like, Saw Gerrera. The Alliance to Restore the Republic would fight him at many different points. In canon, actually, Star Wars Rebels introduces him as a skilled tactician of the 7th Fleet, and he absolutely decimated Phoenix Group many, many times over. And then, after the fall of the Empire at Endor, Thrawn would take control of the Imperial Remnant at about 8 BBY, and he would go from about 7 BBY to 8 BBY on a massive counteroffensive against the New Republic using the Imperial Remnant. And he, throughout this counteroffensive, found Joruus C'baoth, the clone of Joruus C'baoth from the Outbound flight, on a planet called Wayland, where he found a massive amount of cloning cylinders in the Empire's secret project, Mount Tantive. And he would use these cloning cylinders and a secret called Yusselmari, or Yusselmiri, depending on how you find it spelled, and that would allow him to create clones in about 3 months. Whereas the Grand Army of the Republic, many, many years before, it took about 15 years to fully, 10 to 15 years to fully grow a clone, depending on whether it was the earlier clones or the later clones. And because he had all this manpower now, he would go searching for what was known as the Dark Force, or the Katana Fleet, which was a fleet of Dreadnought-class heavy cruisers that were all slaved together. It's about 200 ships worth of these Dreadnought-class heavy cruisers. They were all slaved to the flagship, the Katana, and when its crew members caught a hive virus on one of their stops, they charted a course and slaved all the ships together and just jumped. And they vanished for thousands of years almost. So Thrawn had this massive fleet of ships and the manpower with which to crew them. And then, as time would progress, Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa Solo, Talon Karrde, a smuggler whose base was on the planet where Thrawn got the Yusselmiri from, and Mara Jade, his second-in-command, who was originally the Hand of the Emperor, or the Emperor's Hand, as she was known by Thrawn. And they would all go to Wayland after learning its location, Talon Karrde and Leia Organa Solo, after Luke, Mara Jade, Han Solo, and a party of all of them, and to try and destroy the cloning cylinders. And they would kill Joruus C'baoth when he tried to stop them. And then, while this is all going on, Thrawn would be killed by Rook, his own Noghri guard, because of Leia having talked to the Noghri and discussing with them the treason of the Empire, keeping them enslaved for a total of 44 years. And Leia didn't enjoy learning that it was Clone Wars era ships, and it was Clone Wars era that they were enslaved, and then the Empire had been taking their personal liberties of keeping them under control and making them think that they owe this life debt to the Empire for all these years. And so Rook would kill Thrawn during the Battle of Bilbringi, which was this last battle of the Imperial Remnant. that they would actually win, because Captain Pelion, Thrawn's second in command at this time, would have Rook killed and then order the fleet to retreat, and they would retreat until the New Republic and Empire formed the Galactic Alliance many years later. And so Thrawn would then be dead. This was during the third book of the trilogy, the Thrawn trilogy, and Timothy Zahn was the first to write about the Grand Admiral, this Chiss Grand Admiral. So his story is the reason that we have Grand Admiral Thrawn and all the stuff about him. And you might think that Thrawn's death is the end of his story in Legends, but actually 10 years after the Battle of Balebringi and his death, Luke and Mara Skywalker, because Mara Jade and Luke got married, they ended up dealing with problems left over from Thrawn called the Empire of the Hand, which was a secret in the unknown regions where Thrawn spent most of his time working for the Empire until the counteroffensive that he created. They had a clone of Thrawn deep in the unknown regions, and Mara and Luke actually had a chance to join the Empire of the Hand and take the clone, and who had all of Thrawn's memories, take him and let him join the New Republic as a great tactician. Unfortunately, because of the Empire of the Hand, Mara and Luke denied joining that, and to escape them, they had to destroy the facility and killed Thrawn's clone, which hadn't awoken yet. So they ended up killing the last person who knew about the Yuzhan Vong invasion. And then 20 years or so later, after they destroyed Thrawn's clone, the Galactic Alliance, which I mentioned earlier, which is a merged New Republic and Imperial remnant, they had to deal with what Thrawn was preparing for all his life, the Yuzhan Vong, which were an intergalactic race of force-resistant monsters. You couldn't mind trick them or anything, no matter how weak-minded they were, that would wipe out entire galaxies before moving on to the next galaxy. They were essentially Darth Nihilus, but they traveled on planet-sized organic ships, and they would eat planets as a race, essentially, and would just destroy entire galaxies and keep going. Luke Skywalker and the new Jedi Order were barely able to save the galaxy from this threat, and the Galactic Alliance was able to help them using the Pelion-class Star Defender, or Star Destroyer, and other large ships, small ships, and they assisted the new Jedi Order in defeating the Yuzhan Vong. So the Vong were no longer able to terrorize the universe. So that's all that Legends has to offer about Thrawn's story. If I wanted to, I could talk about what all Thrawn did while he was a part of the Empire for the 17 years from when he graduated to when he became a Grand Admiral. For quite a lot of his time as Captain and Admiral and Grand Admiral, he spent it in the unknown regions creating the Empire of the Hand that I mentioned, and preparing to defeat the Yuzhan Vong. This was all with Palpatine's full knowledge of the Yuzhan Vong, and all of what he did. Hilariously, in Legends, Palpatine was seen after the fact as a hero, as an unseen hero that took over the galaxy, and then the Death Star, the Death Star 2, all of these massive superweapons, they might have been for the sake of fear and trying to keep his people in line, the people of the galaxy in line, but they actually would have been able to be used against the Yuzhan Vong. And the fight against the Vong would have been a lot easier and would have taken much less time had Palpatine's plans gone through. So that's all of what Legends has to offer of Thrawn's life, death, and his unfinished rebirth. Now, between Legends and Canon is Thrawn essentially banished himself to the unknown regions to create the Empire of the Hand and prepare for the invasion of the Yuzhan Vong, and that's Legends, whereas Canon, he was forcefully banished to Peridia by Ezra Bridger in the show Star Wars Rebels, and he ended up way far outside of the Star Wars galaxy. So now that he's returning from Peridia at the end of the Ahsoka series, it's going to be assumed that Thrawn is going to use the Imperial Remnant that Pelion, Gideon, all of these other, the Shadow Council, as they are calling themselves, have created, so that Thrawn can now take over, and he's going to attack the New Republic. And since Ezra Bridger made it back as well, the New Republic knows that he's coming. And he very much so, because Legends, he is essentially playing four-dimensional chess while the Republic is playing checkers. Whereas it seems that in Canon so far, he's playing regular chess against the Rebel Alliance, so far as we've seen. So in Canon, he's probably not going to make it as close to defeating the New Republic as in Legends, because in Legends he literally gets to the point where Coruscant cannot have ships land or exit space due to Thrawn's attack on Coruscant. And they barely are able to do anything because his full-scale venture, had him releasing asteroids that were cloaked, so you couldn't see them, surround all over the place around Coruscant, and they thought they had destroyed all of the asteroids, but they didn't realize it because they were cloaked. They thought there were a lot more than there actually were because of how Thrawn set it up. And so far as we've seen in Canon, Thrawn has not shown the tactical ability to do something like this. In the Ahsoka series, he did not even he barely expected Ahsoka to make it to try and stop him. He thought that she would be stopped by now, by the time she got to where he was. And then in Canon, during the Clone Wars, Commander Thrawn of the Chiss Ascendancy actually helped General Skywalker destroy a droid factory in the Unknown Regions, which is a story for another day, to be honest. It shows up in Thrawn Alliances, the story of how they met back then, and they destroyed a Cortosis battle droid factory of the B3 Cortosis battle droid, separate from the B3 Ultra battle droid. But again, that's a story for another day. In Legends, the only interaction they might have had pre-Empire was if they had a discussion during the outbound flight incident, which they didn't, because Palpatine was the only person who dealt with Thrawn at that time. And I can't help but think that Padawan Anakin Skywalker meeting Commander Thrawn would have been such a cool story to read. Like, who would not want to hear about Padawan Skywalker and Commander Thrawn of the Chiss Ascendancy talking? It would have just been really cool to hear. So yeah, that's the life and legend of Mitth'raw'nuruodo. Please let me know in the comments what you think will happen in Canon with Thrawn now that he's returned from Peridia. If you have any corrections or concerns about the Legends information that I presented, please let me know. And feel free to return any time for another delve into the archives. It's always a pleasure to share our knowledge with you.